Hey everybody, welcome back to On Call Medicine Podcast. Today's episode, we're going to kind of get right to the point. There's no sugarcoating it. We're talking about obesity today. This is a health crisis. It's the biggest health crisis that we're facing today. And this is one that, I myself fall into, and hopefully through this discussion today, we can all come up with a strategy to improve that. But before we get into the meat and potatoes, no pun intended, I'm joined today by my friend, co-host, Phil. How are you?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me, as always.
Yep, thanks for being here. Yeah, this is a huge topic, obesity. And if you guys stay till the end here, we're actually gonna launch a little bit of a fitness challenge, something that I'm certainly going to engage in. No more excuses. It's time to reclaim that life that we wanted, that health that we desperately need. So please stay tuned because we're going to talk about that. A deeply personal topic for a lot of people. So much is tied to our weight, our appearance, our depression rates, anxiety rates. Everything is so intertwined here, and yet so many of us struggle with this. Now, I guess in your own personal history, Phil, has weight ever been something that you have struggled with?
I myself, I can say that it has not been an issue for me. In fact, almost the opposite, in the fact that I've always been self-conscious of how skinny I was growing up as a kid, and I would eat exorbitant amounts of food trying to bulk up. Yeah. I would try and eat a lot of things just to see if I can gain some weight and kind of fill out a little bit and not be so scrawny. And that in and of itself led to some unhealthy eating habits and quality of food that I was consuming.
Sure. And that's actually important, I think, to highlight too, because there are those who are struggling who are maybe underweight. And certainly a lot of people out there can be very unkind to both parties, right? There's a lot of jokes and a lot of things to be said out of those who are overweight. And there certainly can be things said about those who maybe are underweight.
And I've heard them all.
Yeah. And so, again, going back to our previous episode about just being kind to each other, yourself and each other. And I think you also touched on another point. Weight doesn't necessarily equate to health status. In some cases, you can certainly have an unhealthy diet and maybe not, and maybe be fortunate, say, from a metabolism perspective, to maintain a pretty healthy weight. Now, that's probably uncommon, I think, especially as we age, but it certainly is a thing. So I think our goal through today is obviously to talk about the scope of this problem, how it is affecting our health in every other way, but then how do we ultimately start on that journey towards better health, better decisions, and then, of course, weight loss is part of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I know there's been a lot of folks, and although I myself have an exceptionally high metabolism, I've definitely got members of my own family that have had issues that they've struggled with in regards to weight. And so they've done what they can to try and curb the weight, lose weight, or maintain a certain weight. And I feel for them because I see the frustration of going through some of the dietary plans that are the fad at the moment.
Sure.
And a lot of times I'll see them achieve a certain goal weight and then turn right around within a few months, putting the weight back on.
Yeah. That's extremely common. And that comes, maybe before I jump into that, the science behind that, might be a good time to even share my own journey or my own experience with this.
Please.
Growing up, I really wasn't a kid who struggled with weight. I was active in sports, played pretty much every season, was involved in something. And so really was in, by all accounts, I think, good shape and a good weight, really all the way up and through. Actually, when it was ironic here, I was at a very good, healthy weight up until I was accepted into medical school. So this is the irony.
That is ironic.
I got accepted into medical school, started attending medical school, and then the stressors of everything, the workload, the time constraints.
Probably the poor sleeping habits, circling back to yet another episode.
For sure. All of the above really caused a big issue. Because not only then was I having issues with, say, my own metabolism, increased inflammation from, say, poor sleep, inactivity, but when I was eating, I certainly wasn't making right decisions because I was going for the quick thing, the quick hitter, which was mostly processed foods, right? High calorie foods. And so that's what I was doing. And then, of course, at that point, I was also a little bit older, and there were some natural changes in metabolism. And then that's when I started to really put on some weight. Now, towards the end of medical school, I actually was able to rein a lot of that in. I think as I got more comfortable, a lot more confident, I got my patterns, my routines down a little bit better, then I was able to then kick it back in gear with my own health. And then, of course, come having 3 children, and then getting into residency where the workloads were even worse, the sleep deprivation, all those things were even worse. That's really where I think it started to cascade to the point where I got to be a very unhealthy weight for myself. And that has largely carried over. Now and I see it every day too in my practice, right? Patients are coming in and here's the weight by the number, obesity by the numbers, right? So about 30 to 40% of the population is obese. And how do we define obesity? Well, BMI, which I know can be a flawed metric, but it is the universal metric that we use.
It's a standard that we're using, right?
It's a standard. So BMI greater than 30 is considered obese. And then, of course, morbid obese or severe obesity over, say, BMI of 40. So about 40% of the population falls into the obese range. And then if you account for, say, allowing overweight, so BMIs of, say, 25.1 to 29.9, now we're scaling all the way up to about 70%. So 7 out of 10 of every person who's walking around in this country, an adult, I should say, falls into the category of either obese or overweight. And this, as I said in the intro, this is a health crisis. This is a big problem. And like I said, I see it every day in my practice, folks coming in and they're desperate. Like and a lot of times I'm doing all these things, I'm trying, but then when you really get into the meat of it, they talk about the stresses of their job. They talk about their poor sleep. They talk about the lack of time, the lack of exercise. And then those are the moments where it's time to have just a really honest conversation. Say I was watching an episode of a guy that I know from high school who's actually also has a podcast and he's doing great things. And maybe if he gives me permission, I'll give him a little shout out here. But I was watching one of his episodes and he was interviewing somebody and they made this comment that, again, I'm sorry I do this every episode, but I'll probably butcher it, but it was something along the lines of, if you don't change it, you choose it, or something along those lines.
I like that.
And it was obviously, that's a very meaningful statement. Because if you're not happy with something, or if something's not what it's supposed to be, but you're not changing it, well, then you're accepting it. You're choosing it. And that's not to say, right, we don't choose cancer. We don't choose diabetes or certainly
type 1 diabetes. But you can choose how to deal with it.
But you can certainly choose how you want to combat it, how you want to tackle it. And so I'm hoping through the course of this conversation, maybe my own experience here of descending into what is not a very healthy lifestyle, even though I'm there promoting healthy lifestyles every day, I think it's time we all change in some way. And even maybe someone's out there listening who maybe doesn't struggle with their weight, probably related to someone who does, probably knows someone who does, has friends who do, or maybe even if they're not struggling with their weight, maybe they're not making the best choices for their health. And so I think we try to form this covenant maybe here today where we all, starting now, no more of this, hey, Monday I start. Okay, right. You know what?
I'm going to get to it.
Tonight.
Right, none of that.
Tonight we're going to bender tonight, but tomorrow we start. Monday we start. Next month we start. No, we start now. The best time to start was yesterday. The second best time is now.
Exactly.
And that's what we're going to do. But back to your first question though, Phil. You guys maybe have noticed if you stuck around, this tends to happen. So bear with me.
And if I nod off, just somebody's going to zap me with something to wake me up.
You may see me kick. Right? The question was, why is it so hard to maintain the weight loss, right? We lose weight and then we put it right back on. So a lot of that goes into the body actually doesn't want you to lose weight. And so there's this concept of metabolic set point, right? And this is where the body metabolically feels is our zen. It's our homeostasis, if you will. But it may be wrong. Like it may be 60 pounds wrong in my case. And that's partly because of the pattern of behavior that I've basically fed it. It's, if you imagine Setpoint, metabolic set point, it's like a very complex thermostat. It's the smartest thermostat that's ever existed in that it is balanced out by all of the activities of our daily life. And it's influenced by sleep, and it's influenced by stress and cortisol levels. It's influenced by thyroid function, influenced by our physical activity level. It's influenced by our jobs. It's influenced by everything we come encounter with. And there's also something called epigenetics, which means how our genes respond to our environment. So it could be it could be responding to the weather. It could be responding to the heat. It could be all of the things that play into our body's constant balance of trying to keep us at this place. This is that metabolic set point. This is that thermostat. And this kind of goes back to maybe biology or evolutionary biology. When there was a time where food was scarce. And when you had a calorie deficit that was maybe the body recognized as something that was persisting, it didn't like it. It didn't want it. And so it started putting in regulatory measures to try to avoid that. Mm-hmm. And so there's this concept of adaptive thermogenesis. It's this concept that as we expose our body to sustained calorie deficits, it will start to down-regulate its own metabolic activity. So it starts slowing down the metabolism a little bit because it says, all right, we need to conserve some of this energy. And so this is why when we lose weight, and oftentimes that weight loss is pretty quick because we go on these fad diets, Atkins diet, keto diet, all these different things to lose weight. And
whatever is the newest trend on TikTok or whatever.
Exactly. And then we'll lose that weight. Actually can lose it relatively quickly, but the body never accepted that new weight. It was sitting there just wondering when you were going to stop because it was like, what are you doing here? This wasn't part of the agreement.
Right.
And then everything it's doing in that moment is to try to bring you back. And it's producing those hormones, things like ghrelin, which are the appetite hormone, and it's adjusting thyroids. It's doing all these things to stimulate your hunger. So say, come on, bring it back up. And then when you start gaining the weight, it's like, all right, good. You're finally listening. But hey, we're not just going to stop where we were.
We're not done here. Yeah, right.
We're not going to stop because you've shown us that you may misbehave. So now we're going to take it higher. And so then we end up not only gaining it back, but we end up going a little bit higher.
A little bit more on top of it.
Yeah. And so that's really the science behind why it is so incredibly hard to maintain that weight or maintain that weight loss, because our metabolic set point never signed the contract. It never agreed to the change. And then so here we are in this sort of vicious circle of weight loss, weight gain, putting on more, never really feeling like we can get to that point where we need to be or where we want to be.
Interesting. So what kind of options do folks have?
Yeah. So what do we do about it?
How do we handle this?
Yeah. And so it can be, while I would say this is one of those adversaries that while it's not easily defeated, it is not invincible though either, but it's understanding that and it's working with your body on that. Mm-hmm. And so having maybe that more moderate sustained, say, calorie deficit where we're not maybe going all full fad diet, we're talking about true life-changing patterns, true life-changing routines, switching the foods over to the clean and the whole foods and the fiber-rich foods, higher protein diet, giving the body what it wants, satisfying it, but also able to operate on that calorie deficit. Because sometimes you'll hear folks talk and they can almost overly simplify it. It's calories in, calories out, calories in, calories out. And that generates a deficit. And if you're generating deficit, you're going to lose weight. No, it's not that simple. That's right to an extent. But again, it goes back to that set point. So then if you can sustain this over time, you can rewire that set point to accept it.
Interesting.
And then sometimes taking maybe dietary breaks. And so say if you are on a relatively strict, say, calorie count, which is generally useful for losing weight, then perhaps after you say plateau, because that's why we plateau is because of that downregulation of metabolism, maybe you do say give yourself a little bit of a break from the severe restrictions. That way you can kind of give your body back a little bit about what it wants, or a little, you're sort of playing a little bit of game of tug of war, I suppose. But then you kind of get back into it. So you make those subtle changes. You can even stop here, kind of plateau for a little bit, and then make some more of those subtle changes. And this is where physical activity becomes so crucial, because we know that another way to boost that metabolism rate is to exercise. Not just exercise, but weight strengthening, weight training exercise. Aerobic exercise is great. It's great for the heart, but strength training can be much more useful here because it actually consumes a heck of a lot more calories and more energy to help build those muscles and help build the building blocks that your body needs to, say, sustain. So those are a couple of options, certainly. And I think that's really going to be, I think, for the sake of, we could talk about medications and all that too. And I don't think that's not really my goal here. It's certainly a common question I get asked, but I think at the end of the day, if you can do something and you can do something with using your own mechanics, then that's what you should do.
I like that. I know that I definitely need to get back into habit of a little bit more regular physical activity. I did have a routine going. And that's one of the things that people don't really take into consideration. They look at me and they see center upper torso, and they think, oh, you're healthy because you're skinny. And they don't perceive any kind of problems that I may have going on the inside due to my inactivities, my eating habits, and things of that nature. So I think even for myself, it'd be good for me to get myself back into a routine, a rhythm, and some physical activities.
Sure. I think we could all benefit from making healthier decisions in life, whether that's the food we're eating, the things we're drinking, the physical activity that we're doing, putting down devices at night and trying to be more present in the moment with your family and boost that mental health and getting better sleep, becoming more productive in your daily life. Those are all things, and weight is just a sliver of that. I think the other thing with weight, or part of the struggle with weight, and I'll get this question sometimes too, it'll be, Doc, I watch what I eat, I count my calories, I exercise every day. Why am I not losing weight?
What am I doing wrong?
What's wrong? And those are admittedly harder conversations to have, because it's, it's in almost anything in health, whether it's high blood pressure, high sugar, high cholesterol. When I see somebody who comes in and let's say their blood work looks a little rough, the first question obviously is, what have we been doing? What's our lifestyle look like? And for me, it's almost easier if the lifestyle has been bad. If the habits have been bad, it's Doritos and Mountain Dew all day, baby. That's my go-to, right?
Every now and then I'll throw in some Reese Cups.
Exactly. You never know. Frankly, those are easy.
Right.
Stop that. It's the ones that are seemingly, I say seemingly because there are a lot of hidden things out there, and there are a lot of things that may catch us by surprise, but when it's those who seemingly are doing everything right, that can be where it gets tough. Now, one thing though I tend to tell people to do is, okay, if you're serious about this, right? Like, it's one thing, like if you come in and you say, I'm upset with my weight, I'm unhappy with my activity level, but then go on to say, hey, like my job is doing this, my job's killing me, I'm not sleeping, you got to be really serious about what you want. And I understand that those things aren't easy to fix. I understand that we can't control all of those maybe external stressors around us all the time. And I 100% get that. But you also can't expect a different outcome though either, right? Like, it's that, I don't know, it was Einstein or whoever who said insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome.
Right.
Like you can acknowledge those struggles, but you also have to accept, going back to what we said, right? If you don't change it, you accept it. So sometimes it's about really then digging in the weeds and saying, so what are we doing? Those who maybe say, hey, I've actually been quite healthy. Sometimes it's starting a food journal or something. Just, all right, from now, I want you to write down everything you eat. From the time you wake up, the time you go to bed, the time you did it, all that. I want you to write down
meals, snacks, everything in between.
Everything. I want you to write down how much you're sleeping. I want you to write down how much activity you're getting. All of it. Because oftentimes we can uncover some hidden things in there. I'll give you an example. There's this breakfast restaurant that my wife loves called First Watch. I don't know if you've heard of it. I think it's probably...
Might have heard of it.
Yeah. Maybe been a time or two.
Once or twice.
Yeah. It's
actually pretty good stuff.
I don't mind it. She loves it. So it's one of those things where the joke is she wants to go to First Watch. I want to go somewhere else. So we compromise and we go to First Watch.
Exactly.
Because, at the end of the day, happy wife, right? So, but anyway... the food item that she gets, it's the AM Superfood Bowl or something like that. It's filled with really good ingredients, like really healthy ingredients. When you look at chia seeds and quinoa or whatever and then fruit like strawberries and I think probably even some almonds or something pecan, whatever. Really good high protein sources, good food, high quality stuff. And if you were to take all of those and separate them out, I don't think anyone would look at those ingredients and think there's anything bad there. But when you look at the total calorie content, it's like 1,200 calories or something like that. I guess it is truly an AM superfood, but it is packing that. Now, she ends up usually only eating about half of it and then saving the other half for later. But you can imagine if you ate that, especially for women are at a disadvantage, less calorie, we'll say load that they're more or less allowed to intake to say count for weight loss. But let's say you ate that. Let's say you ate it every day. You're probably at 80% of your maybe allowed calorie content in order to say lose weight, to generate a deficit right there in that one meal.
Just starting it all off before you even get on to snacks or lunch, much less dinner. Exactly.
And don't get me wrong, like that fuel, because it is a better fuel, it's going to burn better. It's going to burn longer. You're probably not going to be as hungry, say an hour later for snacks and chips. But the point is that you've almost consumed your whole allotment. So be very particular, write it all down. That way we can get a good idea. And you're right, sometimes it is a little bit beyond our control. There certainly are other factors that play in here. So often thyroid, I think, probably gets a lot of press for this. Active thyroid certainly can cause weight gain. But the problem, this is where it gets tough though. When you check thyroid, you check cortisol, you check all these things, let's say they all come back normal. So it doesn't mean it's not maybe hormonal. The problem is it may be something that's a little bit harder for us to truly manipulate, or certainly manipulate through, say, medication.
Okay.
And so this is where then you get into other things like gut microbiome. So our gut biome, the bacteria that makes up our intestine, plays a crucial role in this because it affects the way that, say, calories are absorbed, the way that they're, say, disseminated. And then so there's some evidence actually that early exposure to excessive antibiotics, we're always talking about antibiotic stewardship and not overdoing it.
Right.
Early onset or early exposure. So in childhood, a lot of antibiotics, let's say you had multiple strep infections or whatever the case may be, actually has a higher incidence rate of obesity later on.
Interesting.
Because of some of that disruption in that gut microbiome. And so then sometimes with those individuals where we really can't find another source, sometimes we're kind of looking at that. Now we're getting a little bit so esoteric there, like getting down to the molecule, but sometimes you have to a little bit and kind of look, okay, what are we maybe doing here, or what could we be doing here to perhaps fix that? Because if you look, so kind of another example of why that's so crucial, if they've looked at this, let's say you have twins, let's say those twins have very different, say, body habitus. One is perhaps, say, healthy weight, maybe more, so quote, on the thin side. And then let's say the other one is not. And they've actually analyzed the gut microbiomes of each, and they're vastly different. So it just goes to show you that sometimes the answer is a little bit deeper, and sometimes it's not so easy. But that is, I would say, probably not the most common thing that we'll see. I do think, again, like I said earlier, sometimes it's about just having a real honest conversation with you and yourself and not sugarcoating it, and just say, hey, this is what we need to do.
I like what we've covered today. I really do. Let me ask you this, if you don't mind me asking a personal question, because I appreciate the vulnerability that you showed and just pointing it inward, saying, hey, listen, before we really get into this, I want to share my aspects of things. Sure. And I want to join in on this because this isn't me just pointing fingers and saying, oh, if you guys got to deal with this. Is something that I have a part in this too, and I want to start a journey to getting this corrected. What do you see for yourself in the future on what you want to do for your own?
Yeah, great question. Glad you asked it.
Things you want to do.
Because I think part of the reason that I wanted to start On Call Medicine, start this podcast, start the website, there's a lot of reasons, but one of those was self-accountability. I recognize that it could probably look quite a bit hypocritical for a patient to come into the doctor's office, the doctor to look at him and say, you need to lose weight, right? You're like, what are you doing? Because I can only imagine, I've never had a patient, of course, let me backtrack that a little bit. That's really not my style. Like I'm not one to come in and be like, what are you doing? Are you happy with your weight? No, that is not my style at all. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have to have a conversation sometimes about how it's affecting things. Certainly, it's part of the job, but there is a much, much better way to go about it than trying to pick on what's likely already in a vulnerability. Most people who find themselves overweight, they know it, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we own mirrors, right? And nobody generally wants to be. And that just shows you, like we said at the beginning of the episode, 70% fall under an overweight or obese category. If it was easy, then that number would be
much lower.
10%. It would be almost zero if it was easy. That just shows you how incredibly hard it is. And part of what I want to do today was tell you, it's definitely not all your fault. Now, it's our responsibility with what we do next, but it's not all your fault. Some of it is in our food engineering, right? Like the way that food science today is, we talked about this too in other episodes, processed foods and things.
Yeah.
These foods are designed to block things like leptin, which is a hormone that makes you feel full. So these foods are designed to have you, Pringles, once you pop, you can't stop. When you eat these types of things, your body never registers it as, hey, I'm good now. And so some of it is, again, changing those patterns, making better decisions. But going back to myself, right, recognizing that, hey, I don't want this to be hollow advice, right? That's not my goal. My goal in part of the goal of starting this was self-accountability. Now, since we've started this, now I've not shared this, but since we started this, I have actually made a lot of changes, about 18 pounds down from the beginning of this.
Nice.
Maybe not easy to tell yet, but I'm hoping it will be eventually because I don't want to just say it. I want to live it.
Yeah.
And so moving forward, this is our challenge, right? It's not just a weight loss challenge. This is a fitness challenge. This is a health challenge. Start today with maybe one thing. We call it the 1% better rule. Now, for those of you who do better with that wholesale change, because some do, some it has to be, hey, like I can't do this whole, like, I'm going to, instead of 4 sugars in my coffee, I'm going to do 3.5. No, like
Right.
some,
They're all in. Yeah.
some have to do it that way. Now, those who do it that way, I want to caution you, set realistic kind of goals and expectations, because when one of the things we can see, kind of we talked about earlier, sometimes quick off, quick on. And so we can burn ourselves out sometimes when we go pedal all the way down to the floor.
Right.
But the point is, join us today on this health covenant. Join me today on this health covenant. We're going to check in periodically with this. And again, we can be held accountable, right? If you yourself say, hey, you know what, this sounds like something I need to get in on, drop a comment, tell us, say, hey,
Please.
yeah,
Please.
because then I can check in with you every so often. You can check in with me. We can hold each other accountable. We're going to try to hold each other accountable here.
Absolutely.
And so I think that was the future outlook of this, was to say, hey, starting today, no more excuses, no more, we'll do it tomorrow.
No more putting it off.
Exactly.
No more procrastination.
Yeah. And that can cascade over into every other element too of your health. If you've been putting off getting blood work done, if you've been putting off doing that screening test, we'll call back episode 1. If you've been putting off, calling your parents just to say, hey, what's up? Life got busy and maybe we haven't talked in a while, or that friend or something. Do it today. Like, life is speeding out of control. Slow it down today. Do something to reclaim part of that.
I like that. I think that's a good way to end off. That's a really good
Impassioned.
message. That's very good.
Did you feel it?
Closing message. I did.
Good.
It's got a warm tingliness right here in
Yeah.
the chest.
Yeah. I feel like I'm spitting fire now or something.
It's been a pleasure as always. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
With that, as always, by all means, if you're tuning in for the first time or if you're rejoining us, thank you for joining us today, listening in on Spotify, YouTube, or other apps. We're grateful for having you. Please, by all means, help us get the word out to others. Subscribe. Tell your friends about us. We'd love to have more opportunities to share great things like this with you. But until the next time, I'm Phil.
Dr. Todd.
Live well.
Live well.